The whispers started before Emma Bailey ever set foot in Jerome Junction, Arizona. Her husband making sure of that in the spring of 1878. Marcus Bailey had arrived 3 weeks ahead of his wife, spinning tales in every saloon, every general store, every shadowed corner where men gathered to swap stories and judgments. He painted Emma as unstable, as given to wild accusations and desperate for attention. He spoke of her supposed delusions with such practiced sorrow that hardened miners nodded with sympathy, and their wives clutched their shawls tighter, already deciding they wanted nothing to do with a woman so troubled. By the time Emma's stagecoach rattled down the dusty Main Street, the poison had already seeped into every crack of the small mining town perched on Mingus Mountain. Emma stepped down from the coach, her dark hair pulled back severely, her green eyes taking in the copper-stained hills and ramshackle buildings clinging to the steep terrain. She was 24 years old, and she had learned in the past 2 years of marriage that hope was a dangerous thing to carry. Marcus waited on the wooden sidewalk, his smile broad and welcoming for anyone watching, but his fingers dug into her elbow with familiar cruelty as he guided her toward their new home. "Remember what we discussed," he murmured, his breath hot against her ear. "You will be grateful, you will be quiet, and you will not embarrass me here like you did in Prescott." Emma had not embarrassed him in Prescott. She had simply asked a neighbor for help when Marcus locked her out of their home during a rainstorm. That neighbor had listened to Emma's tears, had offered her tea and kindness, and Marcus could not tolerate anyone seeing his wife as anything other than the troubled creature he described. They left Prescott within a month. Their house in Jerome Junction was small, perched on a hillside with a view of the valley below. Emma spent her first weeks trying to make it a home, scrubbing floors and hanging curtains, venturing out only when necessary. When she did walk to the general store, conversations died. Women turned away. The clerk served her with eyes averted, counting her money twice as if she might cheat him. She understood quickly what Marcus had done. It was his particular talent, this ability to make people see her through his lens before she ever had a chance to present herself. In the evenings, he would come home smelling of whiskey and tell her about his day, about the friends he was making, about how well respected he was becoming as a surveyor for the mining companies. Then he would list her failures, her inadequacies, the ways she had disappointed him, his voice never rising above a conversational tone that somehow made the words cut deeper. 6 weeks after her arrival, Emma stood in the general store, waiting while Mrs. Henderson was served first, though Emma had been there longer. She said nothing, had learned that speaking up only gave Marcus more ammunition. She was studying a bolt of blue fabric when she heard the door open behind her and felt rather than saw the shift in the room's energy. "Afternoon, Mabel," a deep voice said, and the clerk's wife actually smiled. "Dillon, we have those nails you ordered. Let me fetch them from the back." Emma glanced up briefly, catching sight of a tall man in dusty work clothes, his hat pushed back to reveal sun-browned skin and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. His last name was Jenkins, she would learn later, though most people simply called him Dillon. He was a horse breeder and trainer, 28 years old, and one of the few men in Jerome Junction who had been gone during Marcus's initial campaign of whispers, having been in California purchasing breeding stock. "You can help this lady first," Dillon said, gesturing to Emma. "She was here before me." The statement was simple, factual, but it created a small ripple of tension. Mabel Henderson glanced at Emma with something like distaste, then back at Dillon. "Oh, that is just Mrs. Bailey. She does not mind waiting. You know how she is." Emma felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her eyes on the fabric, her hands folded tightly. "No, I do not know," Dillon said, and there was something in his tone that made Mabel pause. "I just arrived back in town yesterday. How is she?" The silence stretched out, uncomfortable. Finally, Mabel shrugged. Her husband would be the one to ask about that. "I will get your nails." She disappeared into the back room, leaving Emma alone with the stranger. She could feel him looking at her, not with the cold assessment she had grown used to, but with curiosity. "I am Dillon Jenkins," he said. "I do not believe we have met." Emma raised her eyes briefly, offering the smallest nod. "Emma Bailey. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Bailey. Are you finding Jerome Junction to your liking?" It was such a normal question, asked with such genuine interest, that Emma felt something crack inside her chest. She wanted to answer honestly, to pour out every lonely day and cold shoulder, but Marcus's voice echoed in her mind. "It is fine, thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Dillon tilted his head slightly, and Emma had the unsettling feeling that he saw more than she wanted to reveal. But Mabel returned with his nails, and the moment passed. He paid, tipped his hat to both women, and left. Mabel served Emma quickly after that, her manner brusque, and Emma gathered her purchases and fled. That night, Marcus came home drunk and angry. One of the mine shafts had collapsed, killing 2 men, and the company wanted new surveys before they would continue operations. It meant more work for Marcus, and he hated anything that demanded effort he had not planned to give. Emma served dinner in silence, accepting his complaints and criticisms with downcast eyes, waiting for him to either fall asleep or turn his attention elsewhere. "That horse breeder came back," Marcus said suddenly, spearing a piece of meat with his fork. "Jenkins, he was asking about you at the saloon." Emma's stomach tightened with fear. "I do not know him. I met him briefly at the store today." "What did you say to him?" "Nothing. He introduced himself. That is all." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "If you think you can run to some cowboy with your lies, you are mistaken. Everyone here knows what you are, Emma. They know you cannot be trusted, that you make up stories for attention. If you speak against me, no one will believe you. They will just pity me more for having such a troubled wife." Emma nodded, her hands trembling in her lap. Marcus smiled, satisfied, and returned to his meal, but Dillon Jenkins had not asked about her because of anything she had said. He had asked because he recognized the look in her eyes, the careful way she held herself, the silence that spoke louder than words. He had seen it before in his own mother, years ago, before she finally found the courage to take her children and leave. Dillon had been 10 years old when they escaped his father in the middle of the night, and he had never forgotten the way his mother jumped at sudden noises, the way she apologized for things that were not her fault. He started paying attention after that, in the quiet way he did most things. He noticed that Emma Bailey never attended church socials, though her husband was always there, playing cards and laughing with the men. He noticed that she came to town rarely and always alone, her shopping trips efficient and joyless. He noticed that people avoided her, and that she seemed to expect it. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Dillon was riding past the Bailey house when he heard the crash. He reined in his horse, listening. Another crash, and then Marcus Bailey's voice, raised in anger though the words were indistinct. Dillon sat there for a long moment, his jaw tight, then continued on. It was not his business, and a man's relationship with his wife was considered private in 1878, but it gnawed at him. The next day he rode into town specifically to visit the general store when he knew Emma would likely be there. She was examining a basket of apples, her face drawn and tired. There was a bruise on her wrist, barely visible beneath her sleeve, but Dillon's trained eye caught it. "Mrs. Bailey," he greeted her, removing his hat. "Nice to see you again." she startled, nearly dropping the apple she was holding. "Mr. Jenkins." "I wanted to apologize," he said, keeping his voice low and gentle. "I heard I might have caused you some trouble asking about you." "That was not my intention." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "My husband mentioned it. It is all right." "Is it?" Dillon asked, and the directness of the question made her look at him fully for the first time. She saw a man with honest eyes, wearing work-worn clothes and dusty boots, with capable hands and a stillness about him that suggested he did not speak just to hear his own voice. There was kindness in his face and something else, something that looked like understanding. "I am managing," Emma said finally, which was not an answer at all. "I run a horse ranch about 2 miles west of town," Dillon said, as if she had asked, though she had not. "Up on the flat land past the ridge. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you would be welcome there." "I do not think that would be appropriate," Emma said, glancing around nervously. "Probably not," Dillon agreed. "But the offer stands regardless. Sometimes a person just needs to know they have a friend." Emma felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away furiously. "I should go." "Of course." "Good day, Mrs. Bailey." He watched her leave, and then he went to the saloon, though he rarely drank. Marcus Bailey was there, as Dillon had expected, holding court at a corner table with several minors. Dillon bought a whiskey and took a seat within earshot. "My Emma wanted to come to the dance next week," Marcus was saying, his tone long-suffering, "but I had to tell her no. Last time we went to a social gathering, she made such a scene, accusing me of the most ridiculous things. I cannot put her through that embarrassment again." The men around him made sympathetic noises. Dillon sipped his whiskey and said nothing, but he filed the information away. He had been to plenty of social gatherings in Jerome Junction, and Emma Bailey had never been to any of them. Marcus was maintaining his narrative, keeping his wife isolated while pretending it was for her own good. Over the following weeks, Dillon found reasons to be in town when Emma was there. He never approached her if others were around, never did anything that might make things worse for her at home, but he made sure she saw him. He wanted her to know she was not invisible, not forgotten, not as alone as her husband wanted her to believe. Emma began to look for him, though she would not have admitted it even to herself. In a world that had become cold and hostile, Dillon Jenkins was a small point of warmth. He did not stare at her with judgment or turn away with disdain. He simply acknowledged her existence with respect, and that was more than anyone else offered. In July, the heat became oppressive, unusual even for Arizona. The mining operations slowed and tempers ran short. Marcus's work dried up temporarily, which meant he was home more often, drinking more heavily, his criticisms sharper and more frequent. Emma developed a haunted look, moving through her days like a ghost. She was drawing water from the well behind her house one evening when she heard the sound of hoofbeats. She looked up to see Dillon riding past on the trail that ran behind the properties on her street. He slowed when he saw her, then stopped entirely. "Evening, Mrs. Bailey," he called, not dismounting, keeping a respectful distance. "Good evening," Emma replied, gripping the well bucket tightly. "Hot day," Dillon observed. "My horses do not much care for it." "No, I imagine not." They stood there in silence for a moment, and Emma realized this was the closest she had come to a real conversation in months. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "What are they like?" "Your horses," Dillon smiled, and it transformed his face. "Beautiful. Difficult. Stubborn as the day is long. I have a mare right now who thinks she knows better than me about everything, and half the time she is right." Despite everything, Emma felt her lips curve into something almost like a smile. "She sounds spirited." "That is a polite word for it," Dillon said. "Would you like to see them sometime? I know you cannot come alone, but if you and your husband ever wanted to visit the ranch, you would be welcome." Emma's brief spark of pleasure died. "My husband does not care for horses, but thank you for the invitation." "The invitation is for you," Dillon said quietly. "With or without him. I know that is not proper, but I am saying it anyway. You deserve to have something in your life that brings you joy, Mrs. Bailey." Before Emma could respond, she heard the door slam inside the house. Marcus, looking for her. She set the bucket down hastily, her face draining of color. "I have to go," she whispered urgently. "Please, you should not be here." Dillon understood immediately. He tipped his hat and rode on without another word, but his jaw was tight with anger. Not at Emma, but at the situation, at the man inside that house, at a society that allowed women to be trapped and isolated with no recourse. Marcus came around the side of the house just as Dillon disappeared from view. "Who were you talking to?" "A rider passing by," Emma said, picking up the bucket again. "No one important." Marcus grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the same spot he had bruised before. Emma gasped in pain but did not cry out. She had learned that crying out only made things worse. "Do not lie to me. I saw him." "That was Jenkins, was it not?" "He was just passing by," Emma repeated. "He greeted me. That is all." Marcus shoved her away and water sloshed from the bucket, soaking her skirt. "You are trying to embarrass me. First you make me look like a fool in front of the whole town with your behavior, and now you are trying to carry on with some cowboy. Everyone warned me you would do this." Emma wanted to scream that she had done nothing, that she barely existed in this town because of his lies, that she had spoken perhaps 20 words to Dillon Jenkins in total. But she had learned that defending herself only made Marcus angrier. So she lowered her eyes and apologized, as she always did, and Marcus stormed back into the house to find more whiskey. That night, Emma lay in bed and allowed herself, for the first time in a long time, to imagine a different life. She imagined a small house with a garden, a place where she could speak without weighing every word, where she could have friends and conversations and simple human kindness. She imagined Dillon Jenkins's steady eyes and quiet strength, and then she forced herself to stop, because imagining only made the reality harder to bear. But something had shifted inside her, some small seed of rebellion that Marcus had not yet managed to crush entirely. The next week, when Marcus left early for a surveying job that would keep him gone until evening, Emma did something she had not done in 2 years. She made a decision for herself. She put on her bonnet, took the household money from the tin where Marcus kept it, and began walking west, out of town, toward the flat land past the ridge where Dillon had said his ranch was located. It took her nearly an hour in the heat, and by the time she saw the house and corrals, her dress was damp with sweat and her feet ached. She almost turned back 3 times, terrified of what Marcus would do if he found out, but each time she forced herself to keep walking. She needed this, needed one moment of choice, one small act of defiance. Dillon was in the corral working with a tall bay mare when he saw Emma approaching. He immediately handed the lead rope to his ranch hand and walked out to meet her, his face creased with concern. "Mrs. Bailey, are you all right? Did you walk all this way?" Emma nodded, suddenly unsure of what to say. "You said I could come see the horses. I wanted to see them." Dillon glanced toward town, calculating how long Marcus might be gone based on the surveying schedule he had made it his business to know. Then he smiled at Emma, really smiled, and held out his hand. "Then let me show you." Emma took his hand, and it was the first time in years that a man had touched her with gentleness. Dillon led her to the corral where 5 horses stood in the shade, their coats gleaming in the afternoon sun. He introduced each one by name and personality, telling stories that made Emma laugh, actual genuine laughter that felt strange and wonderful in her throat. "This is Delilah," he said, stroking the nose of a gray mare with intelligent eyes. "She is the one I told you about. Queen of everything in her own mind." "She is beautiful," Emma breathed, reaching out tentatively. The mare huffed softly and allowed Emma to touch her neck, her coat warm and solid under Emma's palm. They spent 2 hours there, and Dillon did not ask Emma about her bruises or her husband, or why she had no friends in Jerome Junction. He simply gave her space to be herself, to talk or not talk as she chose, to smile without fear. He made coffee and they sat on the porch of his small ranch house, looking out over the valley, and Emma felt something she had almost forgotten existed: peace. "I should go back," she said finally, reluctantly, "before he returns." "I will saddle a horse and ride you back," Dillon said. "You should not walk that distance again in this heat." Emma wanted to argue, worried about what people would say if they were seen together, but her feet were blistered and she was exhausted. She nodded gratefully. Dillon saddled Delilah and helped Emma up, then swung up behind her. It was improper, certainly, but Emma could not bring herself to care. She felt safe for the first time in so long, surrounded by Dillon's steady presence, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. They took the long route, avoiding the main streets, and Dillon let her off a street away from her house. Before she could walk away, he caught her hand gently. "Emma," he said, using her first name for the first time, "if you ever need help, real help, you send word to me. Day or night, it does not matter. You understand?" Emma looked into his eyes and saw that he knew. He knew about Marcus, about the lies and the isolation and probably even the bruises. And instead of judging her or pitying her or turning away, he was offering her a lifeline. "I understand," she whispered. "Thank you, Dillon." She hurried home, and Marcus never knew she had been gone. But Emma carried that afternoon with her like a secret treasure, taking it out in her mind during the worst moments. She had a friend. She was not alone. Throughout August and into September, Emma found ways to visit the ranch. Not often, only when Marcus would be gone for most of a day, but those visits became the bright spots in her existence. Dillon taught her to ride properly, to care for the horses, to move without fear through the barn and corrals. He talked to her about his plans for the ranch, about the horses he hoped to breed, about his childhood in California and his mother's strength. "She waited too long," he said one afternoon, sitting beside Emma on a fence rail while they watched the horses graze. "My father nearly destroyed her before she finally left. I swore I would never be that kind of man, and that I would never ignore the signs if I saw another woman suffering the same way." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus tells everyone I am unstable, that I make up stories and cannot be trusted. He told them before I ever arrived, so I never had a chance to make friends or establish myself. Every day I am more isolated, more dependent on him, more trapped. I have no money of my own, no family nearby, nowhere to go. Even if I left, who would help me? Who would believe me over him?" "I would," Dillon said fiercely. "I believe you, Emma. I see you, and I know what he is doing." Emma felt tears spill down her cheeks, the first she had allowed herself to cry in front of another person in 2 years. Dillon pulled her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest while he held her, his hand gentle on her hair, murmuring words of comfort. "You are not alone," he said. "Not anymore. We will find a way. I promise you, Emma, we will find a way." When Emma pulled back, embarrassed by her outburst, Dillon kept his hands on her shoulders. "I need to tell you something, and I hope it does not frighten you. I have feelings for you, Emma. I think I have since the day I met you in that store. I know you are married, and I know the position that puts us both in, but I cannot keep pretending I see you as just a friend." Emma stared at him, her heart pounding. "I am married," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "You are trapped," Dillon corrected gently. "There is a difference. I am not asking you to do anything about what I just told you. I am just being honest because I am tired of living in a world where the only person who seems willing to tell the truth is me." Emma reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I have feelings for you too. I think I have for weeks now. But I am so afraid, Dillon. If Marcus finds out, I do not know what he will do." "Then we will be careful," Dillon said. "But I will not stand by and do nothing while he hurts you. We will figure this out together." Over the next few weeks, they did become more than friends, stealing moments when they could, their relationship deepening in the small pockets of freedom Emma could carve out. Dillon never pushed her beyond what she was comfortable with, understanding that she needed to reclaim her own agency slowly. He courted her the way she deserved to be courted, with respect and attention and genuine care. But secrets in small towns rarely stay secret forever. In October, one of Marcus's friends saw Emma leaving Dillon's ranch. The man told Marcus that evening in the saloon, expecting outrage and sympathy. What he got instead was cold calculation. Marcus did not explode or confront Emma immediately. Instead, he began to plan. The first Emma knew of the discovery was when she returned home from the general store 3 days later to find Marcus waiting for her, sober and calm, which was always more dangerous than his drunken rages. "Hello, wife," he said, his voice pleasant. "I think we need to have a conversation about your activities." Emma's blood turned to ice. "I do not know what you mean." "Do not compound your sins with lies, Emma. You have been carrying on with that horse breeder, sneaking off to his ranch like a common prostitute. I have witnesses. I have been building a case against you, and now I have everything I need." Emma backed toward the door, but Marcus was faster. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back, his pleasant facade dropping away to reveal the rage beneath. "Did you really think you could embarrass me like this? After everything I have done for you? I have protected you, made excuses for you, tolerated your instability, and this is how you repay me." "You have done nothing but torture me," Emma said, and her voice was steady despite her fear. "You have lied about me, isolated me, and made my life a nightmare. I am leaving you, Marcus." Marcus laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You are not going anywhere, and neither is your cowboy. I am going to make sure everyone knows what you have done. I am going to destroy whatever pathetic reputation you think you have left, and then I am going to deal with Jenkins." He shoved Emma toward the bedroom. "You will stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we are going to have a public conversation about your infidelity, and you are going to confess everything and beg my forgiveness. If you do not, I will kill Jenkins, and it will be ruled justified because every man in this town will understand I was defending my honor. Do you understand?" Emma understood that Marcus was serious. She also understood that she was done living in fear. As soon as Marcus passed out drunk that night, she crept from the house and ran through the darkness toward Dillon's ranch, her lungs burning, her dress catching on bushes and rocks. She fell twice, skinning her hands and knees, but she kept running. Dillon was still awake when she pounded on his door, and he took one look at her face and pulled her inside. Emma told him everything, the words spilling out in a rush. "We need to leave," she said. "Tonight. Right now. He is going to try to kill you, Dillon, and he has the whole town on his side. They will believe whatever he says." Dillon's expression was grim. "We cannot run, Emma. He will just follow, and we will spend our lives looking over our shoulders. We need to face this head on." "How?" "No one will believe me over him." "Maybe not," Dillon said. "But there is someone in this town who might be willing to listen. Sheriff Morrison was gone during the early days when your husband was spreading his poison. He is a fair man, and he does not much care for gossip." If we can get to him first, tell him the truth before Marcus poisons that well too, we might have a chance. It was risky, but Emma trusted Dillon. They rode into town together just after dawn, arriving at the sheriff's office before most of the town was awake. Sheriff Morrison was a weathered man in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. He listened while Emma told her story, halting at first, then gaining strength. She showed him the bruises in various stages of healing. She told him about Marcus's campaign of lies, about the isolation, about the control. "Why should I believe you?" Morrison asked, not unkindly. "Your husband has been saying for months that you are prone to wild accusations." "Because I can prove the timeline," Emma said. "Marcus told people here that I made a scene at social gatherings, but I have never attended a single social gathering in Jerome Junction. He told people I was unstable before I ever arrived, before anyone could form their own opinion. He has been building a false narrative to keep me isolated and under his control." "And you," Morrison said, turning to Dillon, "what is your part in this?" "I saw what was happening and tried to help," Dillon said steadily. "I gave Mrs. Bailey friendship when no one else would. Yes, we developed feelings for each other. I am not proud that she is still legally married, but I am not going to apologize for treating her with basic human decency." Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying them both. "Marcus Bailey was in here yesterday. He told me his wife was having an affair and that he intended to confront her lover. He was building a case for justifiable homicide, just in case things got out of hand. I am guessing that conversation is why you are here now." "He told me he was going to kill Dillon," Emma said, "and that the whole town would support him because they believe his lies about me." "Here is what I know," Morrison said after a long silence. "I have been a lawman for 30 years, and I have learned to recognize patterns. A man who speaks as much as Marcus Bailey does about his poor, troubled wife is usually the source of the trouble. I also know that Dillon Jenkins has a reputation as a decent, honest man who keeps to himself. So I am inclined to believe your version of events, Mrs. Bailey." Emma felt hope surge in her chest. "What can we do?" "Not much legally," Morrison admitted. "You are still married to Marcus Bailey, and while what he has done is cruel, most of it is not illegal. The bruises are concerning, but you would need to press charges, and that is a hard road to walk. As for your relationship with Mr. Jenkins here, that could be considered adultery, which would give Marcus grounds for divorce and more." "I do not care about the divorce," Emma said. "I want one, but I need to be safe, and I need Dillon to be safe." Morrison nodded slowly. "Here is what I can do. I can make it clear to Marcus Bailey that I am watching him closely, and that any violence toward either of you will be met with the full force of the law, regardless of what the town gossips think. I can also document Mrs. Bailey's testimony here today with witnesses, so there is an official record that contradicts Marcus's narrative. It is not much, but it is something. It was enough. By the time Marcus came looking for his wife that morning, Sheriff Morrison was waiting for him. The conversation was private, but Marcus emerged pale and tight-lipped, and he did not go near Dillon's ranch. Over the following weeks, the truth began to spread through Jerome Junction the way lies had spread before. People who had been paying attention, who had noticed the inconsistencies in Marcus's stories, began to speak up. The clerk's wife, Mabel, admitted that she had never actually witnessed Emma behaving strangely, only heard about it from Marcus. Another woman confessed that she had felt guilty for avoiding Emma, but had not wanted to go against the general opinion. It was not a dramatic reversal. Many people still believed Marcus, or at least found Emma's behavior with Dillon scandalous. But enough doubt was cast that Marcus's absolute control over the narrative crumbled. The divorce, when it finally went through in the spring of 1879, was bitter and public. Marcus fought it viciously, but with Sheriff Morrison and several newly supportive witnesses testifying about Marcus's behavior, the judge granted Emma her freedom. She emerged from that courtroom with nothing but the clothes she wore and her reputation in tatters, but she was free. Dillon was waiting for her outside, and he took her hand in front of everyone gathered there. "Marry me," he said. "Not today, not until enough time has passed that no one can question it, but eventually when you are ready, marry me, Emma." Emma looked at the man who had become her friend when she had none, who had believed her when no one else would, who had risked everything to help her reclaim her life. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They waited a full year before the wedding, living separately to quiet the gossips, though Emma took a room at the boarding house and worked at the general store to support herself. Dillon courted her properly during that time, taking her on chaperoned rides, bringing her flowers, treating her with the respect and care she had never received from Marcus. Marcus left Jerome Junction in the summer of 1879, unable to bear the whispers that had turned from Emma to him. Some people said he went to California, others said he headed east. Emma did not care. She was building a new life, one where she could speak freely and walk through town with her head held high. Dillon and Emma were married in May of 1880 in a simple ceremony at the small church in Jerome Junction. Not everyone attended, but enough people came that Emma felt, for the first time since arriving in Arizona, like she belonged somewhere. Sheriff Morrison gave her away, and Mabel Henderson, who had become an unlikely friend after much soul-searching about her own behavior, stood as witness. The wedding night was gentle and sweet, Dillon taking his time to show Emma that intimacy could be about connection and joy rather than control and pain. They lay together afterward in the small bedroom of the ranch house, Emma's head on Dillon's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I never thought I would feel safe again," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never could have," Dillon replied, kissing her hair. "You are the strongest person I know, Emma. You survived something that would have broken most people. I am honored that you chose me." They built their life together at the ranch, working side by side with the horses. Emma proved to have a natural talent for training, her gentleness and patience creating bonds with even the most difficult animals. The ranch prospered, and so did their marriage. In March of 1881, Emma discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She had never imagined herself as a mother, and the thought of bringing a child into the world was overwhelming. "What if I am not good at it?" she asked Dillon one evening, her hand on her still flat stomach. "What if I repeat the patterns I learned, the fear and the control?" Dillon pulled her close. "You will be an amazing mother because you know exactly what kind of mother you do not want to be, and you will not be doing it alone. We are in this together, Emma. Everything we do together." Their son was born in November of 1881, a healthy boy with dark hair and his father's steady eyes. They named him Daniel, and Emma fell in love with him the moment she held him. Motherhood was harder than she had imagined, exhausting and demanding, but it was also healing. Every time she comforted Daniel, every time she responded to his needs with gentleness and care, she felt another piece of her own wounded past knit itself back together. Dillon was a devoted father, rising for the midnight feedings, walking the floor with Daniel when he was fussy, his large hands impossibly gentle with the tiny infant. Emma would watch him and feel her heart overflow with gratitude and love. Life settled into a rhythm. The ranch continued to grow, and Dillon's reputation as a horse trainer spread throughout Arizona and into New Mexico. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, good men who treated Emma with respect. She became known in Jerome Junction, not as the troubled wife Marcus Bailey had described, but as Dillon Jenkins's capable partner, the woman who could calm the wildest horse and who had survived something terrible with grace. Daniel grew from infant to toddler to little boy, and Emma's confidence as a mother grew with him. In the spring of 1884, she gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, a tiny fierce thing with Emma's green eyes and a will of iron. 2 children kept them busy, but the chaos was joyful, nothing like the dark, silent misery of Emma's first marriage. On a warm evening in June of 1885, Emma and Dillon sat on their porch, watching Daniel, now nearly 4, chase chickens around the yard while Elizabeth napped in her cradle beside them. The sun was setting over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Do you ever think about those early days?" Emma asked, her hand in Dillon's. "When I had no friends, when I thought I would be trapped forever." "Sometimes," Dillon admitted. "Mostly I think about how close I came to just riding past your house that day, minding my own business. What would have happened if I had not stopped?" "Someone else would have helped eventually," Emma said, though she was not sure she believed it. "Maybe," Dillon said, "but I am grateful it was me. I am grateful for every moment that led us here, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones, because they taught us what we were capable of surviving." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their son laugh as a chicken evaded him once again. "I never knew life could be like this, safe and warm and full of love. You gave me that, Dillon. You gave me everything." "We gave it to each other," Dillon corrected. "You were brave enough to accept help when it was offered, brave enough to trust me, brave enough to fight for your freedom. I just walked beside you while you did the hard work." Daniel ran up to the porch, his face flushed with exertion. "Mama, the chickens will not let me catch them." Emma laughed and pulled him up onto her lap, despite his dusty clothes. "That is because chickens are very clever, my love. You have to be patient and still and let them come to you." "Like you do with the horses?" Daniel asked, settling against her chest. "Exactly like that." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. The scars of her first marriage would always be with her, faint marks on her soul that sometimes ached. But they were balanced now by the joy of her life with Dillon, by the family they had built, by the knowledge that she had survived the worst and come out stronger on the other side. In the years that followed, the ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. Emma and Dillon added 2 more children to their family, another son in 1887 and a final daughter in 1890, rounding out their household with noise and laughter and the organized chaos of a large family. Emma became a quiet pillar of the Jerome Junction community, the woman people came to when they needed someone to listen without judgment. She recognized the signs of trouble in other marriages, the isolation and the fear, and she quietly offered help to women who needed it, giving them the same lifeline Dillon had once given her. Marcus Bailey's name faded from conversation, becoming just another piece of the town's history. Emma heard, years later, that he had died in California of drink, alone and largely unmourned. She felt neither satisfaction nor sorrow at the news, just a faint relief that he was truly gone from the world. Daniel grew into a fine young man who shared his father's skill with horses and his mother's kindness. Elizabeth became a teacher, fierce and passionate about education. The younger children brought their own gifts and personalities into the family, and the house was never quiet, never lonely, never anything like the silent prison Emma had once endured. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1900, Dillon took Emma back to the spot where he had first seen her in town, where their paths had first crossed in that general store so many years ago. "I fell in love with you here," he said, taking both her hands in his. "I saw you standing there, so alone and trying so hard to be invisible, and something in my heart just knew. I knew you were important, knew you needed help, knew I had to be the one to offer it." Emma smiled, her face lined now with the passage of time but her eyes still the same striking green. "I fell in love with you in stages. First when you defended me in the store, then when you offered friendship with no expectations, then when you held me while I cried and told me I was not alone. Every moment with you was another reason to love you more. We have built a good life," Dillon said. "Against all odds, despite everything working against us, we built something beautiful." "We did," Emma agreed. "And I would do it all again, every hard moment, every scary choice, because it led me here, to you, to our family, to this life." They kissed there on the street where they had first met. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and built their way toward the light together. Around them, Jerome Junction continued its evening routine, people passing by with smiles and greetings for the Jenkins couple, respected and beloved members of the community. Emma Bailey Jenkins had arrived in Jerome Junction in 1878 with no friends, no hope, and no future she could see beyond the prison of her marriage. But she left behind that broken version of herself and became Emma Jenkins, horse trainer, mother, friend, survivor, and the great love of Dillon Jenkins's life. Their story was not a fairy tale where everything was magically fixed with a kiss. It was messier than that, harder than that, more real than that. It was a story of choosing courage over fear, of accepting help when pride might have refused it, of one person seeing another's pain and deciding to do something about it, consequences be damned. It was a story of poison spread and truth reclaimed, of isolation ended and community rebuilt, of a cowboy who became a friend and then so much more. It was a story of the American West in all its harsh reality, where women had few rights and fewer options, but where love and determination could still carve out spaces for happiness. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind that is earned through struggle and sacrifice, the kind that feels all the sweeter for the bitter journey that preceded it. Emma and Dillon Jenkins grew old together on their ranch, surrounded by children and grandchildren, by horses and wide open skies, by the life they had built from ashes and hope. When Emma died peacefully in her sleep in 1925 at the age of 71, Dillon was holding her hand, just as he had been holding it, metaphorically or literally, for 47 years. And when he followed her just 8 months later, their children and grandchildren gathered to remember not just two people who had died, but two people who had truly lived, who had loved fiercely and completely, who had overcome darkness to find light. The ranch still stands, passed down through the generations, a testament to what Emma and Dillon built together. And in Jerome Junction, now a ghost town clinging to the mountainside, there are still whispers of their story, of the woman who had no friends because her husband spread his poison, and the cowboy who became her friend, and so much more, and how they proved that love, real love, can survive even the cruelest circumstances. Their story became a legend of sorts, told to young people as an example of courage, told to those suffering as proof that escape is possible, told to romantics as evidence that true love exists. But for Emma and Dillon, it was simply their life, the one they chose, the one they fought for, the one they built together one day, one choice, one act of kindness and courage at a time, and in the end that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.